This lesson is entitled Page Breaks and Section Breaks. And page breaks and section breaks are really fundamental to a lot of the things we do in Microsoft Word. So I think it's pretty important to take a few minutes and just review how these work. And it will really help us out when we're building table of contents and also when we're working with headers and footers. So let's get started. I'm going to start, the very first thing I'm going to do is just create a new document, and we'll just start fresh. So let's go File and New. Blank document, and we have a blank document here. I'm zoomed in about right, but if you want to change that, hold down the Control key and scroll with your mouse, and you can zoom in and out. And of course, down at the bottom, you also have a zoom bar. You can grab that zoom bar and move it in and out. And you can also click on the plus or minus. Every time you click, you get 10%. Okay, so I'm going to come up here to about 150. And now I want you to notice something right here. You have a little paragraph marker here. And the reason we have that is because on the Home tab, I have turned on a feature called Hide and Show. And it shows paragraph marks and other hidden formatting symbols. And this is absolutely important, I think, when editing a document. You just have to know where the paragraph markers are, where your page breaks and section breaks are, and you need to know if you have too many spaces, because you can see that as well. So let's generate some text, and we can kind of see how this editing feature of Show Hide works, and we'll also have some text to start playing around with creating page breaks and section breaks. So let's generate some random text, shall we? We can do that with a function inside of Word, and all functions start with an equals. So it's equals, and then RAND, and then open and close parentheses. If I hit enter right now, I will get a random 5 or so paragraphs. But I want to control that a little better. So inside of here, I'm going to say 25, comma 5. This gives me 25 paragraphs with 5 sentences each. Now I need to move my cursor to the end, that last parentheses, and hit enter. And there we go. If we look down below at the very bottom left, I can see I'm on page 4 of 4, so I have 4 pages of these paragraphs. What is this random text? It's just text, I think, about new features in Microsoft Word. Okay, so now we have some text to work with. Now you can notice these paragraph markers at the end of paragraphs, and so that's why these have a line, because our current settings say that a paragraph, it looks like, has a line and a half or so of space before the next paragraph, so they do. And you also see these little dots, and those little dots in between each word show us how many spaces we have. And you can also see that I have a period, a space, to start the new sentence. A lot of times you'll see 2 spaces, but really the standard modern usage right now is just 1 space between each sentence. So it's kind of a quick way to look and see exactly what's happening. And sometimes those aren't consistent. Sometimes there's 2 spaces, 1, 3 spaces. So it's just good to be able to see all of this. Well, let's look at a little more, and that is dealing with our breaks. So if we go to Layout, there is a Breaks section. It's in the Page Setup group. So Breaks, and if we click on that little down arrow, we see we have a page break, and then down here we have section breaks, next and continuous. Let's start with a page break. I'm going to start by adding a couple of returns right here, and I can see I only have 2. And I'm going to call this title of document. So now I have a title here, and let's say that this is the title, and that's the only thing we want is a title page with just the title. Maybe we have a date or something underneath there. But pretty much we just want this title. So we want to break the page and force it down to the next page. Well, why do we have page breaks? Why does this stop here and then pick up here again? Well, it's because there's not enough room for that to fit in here. And when I say room, I mean size of the page. Because if I go to Layout tab and go to Size, I can see that I'm currently using the 8.5 by 11 page. So when I get to 8.5, 11, Word forces me onto a new page. Well, I'm going to force it before then. So I can put my cursor up here. I can go to Layout and Breaks, and I can click on Page Break. So I can just click that, and it drops me to the next page. I come up here, and I can see I have Title of Document, Page Break, and then nothing here until the next page. So that can be really useful for lots of different reasons. We'll cover a few of them right now. Let's come down here and say that that we don't want to break up this paragraph. This paragraph is so important. I'm going to bold it. This paragraph is so important that it just can't be broken up. Or maybe this is a listed item, or maybe it's a chart, or even a table, right? So maybe I'll make that a table very quickly. I'm just going to break up some of these into paragraphs. Let's see, do I have the end of a sentence? There it is. So now I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 paragraphs, maybe 5 paragraphs. So I'm going to highlight all of those, and I'm going to go to Insert, Table, and say Convert Text to Table. And let's say I want that to be like 3 columns, and I'm going to separate text at paragraph marks. And so there's my table, right? And let's say that table was up here. But it doesn't quite fit, does it? It's hanging over. So this might be a good time to say, hey, I want a page break. I don't want to break up this table. It's too hard to understand if we break it up like that. So I could do something like enter, enter, enter. Oh, there it is. It's on the new page. Well, that worked fine, didn't it? And I'll break that one up. So the problem is you come in here and you say, no, 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 I don't want that sentence in there anymore. I delete that sentence, and now I have this problem again. I got to go back up here and put in more enters again. A much better solution would be to just simply break it. So I'm going to do Control-Z to undo back where we were. And here we have this problem. So I'm just going to break it to the next page right here. I put my cursor there. I go to Layout. I go to Breaks. And then I can just choose Page Break. And now, because I have on my Home tab, I have my Show Codes or Show Hide Paragraph mark showing. I can actually see I have a page break, and then it pushes me to the next page. And then I never have to worry. Even if I deleted some of this text, I still have a page break right there that forces that to the next page. And I'm going to bring that text back with Control-Z, and it doesn't matter. My table always stays there. So page breaks are very useful for things like that. And also this first example, I want this title of this document to be just all by itself on this page. I don't want anything else on here. So that's page break. I'll get rid of some of these extra paragraphs, and it's nice to be able to see where you have those extra paragraphs. So now let's take a look at section breaks and how might those be different. Let's take the example of our table, for instance. Instead of a page break, what if we did section breaks? So I'm going to get rid of this page break. I'm just going to backspace right here to make that go away. And now I'm going to go to Layout, Breaks, and choose Next Page. So I still moved it to the next page, didn't I? Here it is. I'll delete some of these extras. I moved it to the next page, but it's in its own section now. I could even add an extra return right here so that we can see this all the way across. So it's kind of nice sometimes to add an extra return on your page and section break so that you can see it nice and clear all the way across. And I'm going to come down here and add another section break. Go to Layout, Break, Next Section Page, Section Break, Next Page. There it is. And so you can see here that this is all by itself inside of its own section. It's also on its own page because I use section break next page, but it's definitely in its own section. So what are some things you can do? Well, if I put my cursor, let's say right inside of here, just anywhere inside of this section, It could be anywhere. And if I come over here to orientation on my layout tab and I change the orientation to landscape, this becomes a landscape page because it's in its own section. If these were page breaks and I decided to make this landscape, then I'd be in trouble. My entire document would go landscape. So if you've ever seen a document that some pages are portrait and some are landscape, that's how they're able to do it. They use section breaks. And typically, if you really want a landscape page and want to control it well, do a section break to next page. And then you don't have to worry about any problems. All that information will be on its own page and on its own section. So that's very useful. Well, let's take a look at a different kind of section break, and that's continuous. So I'm going to just go right here, say enter. I'm going to go to breaks and do section break but continuous. And then I'm going to come here and say section break continuous. And I'm going to add an extra return so I can see it nice and clear and delete this one right here. So you can see here section break continuous. Now if I turn off my show hide paragraph marker, you can't even tell that there's a section break there, right? It's not, you wouldn't know that I have a section break there. But because of this section break, I can do things to this section that normally would affect my entire document. If I click somewhere in here and I go to say layout and margins and I want to change those to wide margins, I now get a nice wide margin only in that section. So section breaks isolate areas. So that's the basic rundown on using a actual page break versus using a section break continuous and a section break to next page. Now, I recommend learning this first before you go on to things like table of contents and headers and footers.